Alex Answer here. This is actually going to be a video about preventing burnout as a YouTube content creator. And this can also apply to someone that's consuming content. I have a lot of stuff that leans towards the philosophical and spiritual. People can get burnout looking at stuff, looking for truth. And they can think in their mind that they want to, be a normie again and not be aware of so many things. YouTube introduces us to a world of truth. It's not all monetizable. It's not all popular. But YouTube can be very educational, the person that knows how to search for certain things. So instead of, give too much time to my own personal grievances, I want to say that I do take into consideration, especially those that donate, to look at it from other people's perspectives. And a lot of people contribute to platforms in which they're getting something out of it. Not only do some people like the content creator, but more importantly, people like getting something out of content that's produced on a regular basis. Either sheds light on a different reality, or and some aren't so political or spiritual. Their channels are other things. And so people get value out of watching certain types of content that entertains them, maybe informs them. And so there's a whole art to whatever it is that you talk about. There's a whole art to preventing burnout. And I don't really have the answers, but I know that I'm on the quest for answers, been on the quest for a while. There's certain things, obviously, that can affect all of us, some of us more than others. I make a lot less than others, and I live off the grid. So some of the things that are solutions to avoiding burnout aren't as easy for me to apply. But going deeper into nature and other things which some others may not have as much access to, I may lean on that more. Today I'm coming back from one of the next towns over, and I always come back with a sense of disappointment, just feeling the vibes of town. And that doesn't necessarily make the burnout go away, but it makes me appreciate what it is that I have. And what it is that I have, of course, is an ability to create content where I live off the grid without having to go anywhere. And that can be unhealthy, but it can also be healthy just in general to live a certain way of life that isn't involved in other people's drama. It's not easy to just walk into that way of life and stay motivated, but just as far as like some sort of a credential, there's certain credentials that I have and or things that I'm working on to where I'll have a lot more information in the coming years. A lot more information. And really it's baby steps. So for me, it's changing my environment, and I may go into a uncomfortable environment to really be grateful for what I have. Now, I haven't exactly been implementing it to the fullest extent, but trying to get out of my comfort zone, if you will, of the same topics. It's good to stay regular with the same topics, and it's also important to be able to branch out. What works for other people doesn't work for me. What works for me doesn't work for other people. So there's ultimately like the things that are going on inside my mind. Some of them I bother to document and write down. Some of them I think would be best on another YouTube channel or somewhere outside of YouTube. And then there's the stuff that I think is YouTube safe. Before it was like all over the place, and now it's kind of the point where it's like, has it gone to the point where some things are no longer safe? And I just don't mean things that you think are safe. I mean like things that are safe to even bring up with you. There's ways in which we can trigger elements of our own audience by just being who we are. Is it safe to really be who we are? Or do we have to super sanitize everything for the regular audience? Well, I think that even if there's attempts on my part to sanitize certain things, ultimately I say most of what's on my mind, just not all the time anymore. There's been, times in which I've wondered if the things that I've said on this channel has hurt my growth. And then there's another perspective that comes in and says, so what? And in fact, when it comes to the monetary side of things, there's way less coming in on the AdSense. More people support individually, whether it's PayPal, whether it's Patreon, or the members over at VHX. And so even if there are certain things that may be a little bit in the gray area that could hurt me on the algorithm side, I also don't necessarily upload every day. I think by being real and going deeper into my truth, that's how I'm able to make it. That's how I'm able to make ends meet. And that's ultimately how I avoid burnout, even if I still have a normal level of fatigue. Also, how natural is it for us to be doing what we're doing? I mean, it is a little bit, like entry levels of transhumanism, the whole YouTube thing in and of itself. But when you have the idea of us being censored and held back, and also reverse psychology out there as to who's actually being censored, and which individuals are like number one personalities, able to sell their own merchandise. So we're also living in the time of, no offense to those of you that are my audience, but a lot of other audience members seem incredibly dumbed down. That's why they want the content to be a certain way. That's why like idiocracy level content seems to do really well. Well thought out content will just be ignored by the algorithm because the masses are ignoring that. How does somebody keep doing what they're doing when they feel like they're being held back? Or they are. Well, somebody can also run some experiments, start a new YouTube channel, and talk about things without the buzzwords, and see if they have some success. Some will, depend on what it is, and what kind of keywords they're using, what kind of market they're going for. And then some will find that they're still having trouble because it may really be about the fact that they are just way too creative. Some could say right-brained, to be able to focus long enough, I'm kind of describing myself, folks, to be able to conform themselves enough in the box to be able to make their videos more monetizable. It's really about the thumb, the title, the keywords, other things in the description, as well as things that are in the video. So some of us have it in us, to be super left brain on that end, task oriented, and some of us don't. Ultimately, I do listen to a few podcasts here and there, a way of creating content and spreading out that content as far as when it's uploaded. Because people also have a limited amount of time, so a little bit of content every day is better than a whole bunch of content every week. And some of that stuff's basic. I don't always follow those rules of thumb. When it comes to those particular recommendations, but a lot of those recommendations for avoiding burnout from the professionals in the field, I'm going to let these cars pass, happen to include batch recording, which I've already been doing, have done, but I don't do enough. I'll end up batch recording and then allowing those videos to go live. So somebody's like almost overwhelmed with Alex answering one day, and there may be some days where it's dry. For us to be healthy, right, we got to do more than eat our Wheaties and get sunshine and maybe get out of the house once in a while. We actually have to separate ourselves from the content once it's done. That includes the praise. That includes the criticism. We allow people to have the praise and criticism to a certain level. We don't feed on it or the audience. If we don't have a life outside of YouTube, trust me, it sucks. It sucks big time. And I don't really have a life outside of YouTube or outside of my home. But that doesn't mean that I'm giving up, admitting defeat, right? Or saying that the only way to avoid YouTube burnout is to have a part-time job. I haven't applied everywhere. I've applied at some places with the intent that it would actually improve the YouTube channel with a part-time job by bringing in money from somewhere else. I'm going to continue with that attempt in January and February after the snow melts. But we're about to get hit with a lot of snow. So that plan is kind of on pause, but that's one of the things that I'm going to be implementing again, or trying to, in 2019. Because ultimately, every YouTube video should be uploaded with a sense of value. Now, when it becomes about money and someone goes in the clickbait direction, it changes who they are. That's why me and some of the others in alternative media, we don't recognize each other. We're not friends. We don't like each other. We don't stand for the same things. We're actually diametrically opposed on some things, while both claiming that we're of the independent mindset. I think that a lot of people are in the mainstream mindset, and then they will perhaps argue that I'm in the mainstream mindset. So we have an agree to disagree, or maybe disagree that we're disagreeing. But I will say that we agree to disagree. Some people just want to disagree with everything, period. And that's the unfortunate thing. So the community aspect is lost, and I, try to reach out to some other locals, and there's just an adamant, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy, across the board, whoever's receiving the content, which can be incredibly discouraging. But for those that just don't know, that are watching, that are out there, it is not easy to go from a YouTube way of life, even if one has worked full-time and gone to school full-time. Once someone breaks into YouTube and goes off the grid, and they're about 70 miles from the average larger town, working in small towns, folks, or just being around small towns, I'm not even going to fight it anymore. I mean, it's difficult. Trying to change one's life up necessarily to avoid the burnout, it's difficult. And it's not always easy to be successful or feel successful at certain things like that. So to avoid that sense of disappointment, I roll with the punches. It's important to be grateful for what we have. Understand that people, in third world countries, some other places don't even have what we have in the first world. It's amazing how people with less are resented so much too on top of it. How people from the first world that are dealing with first world problems act like other people other than their own government are the things that threaten them. So, it's really important also to remember that we're talking about things that other people may not understand that are alive today. We need to avoid being affected by the negativity that this world may throw at us, that's currently receiving our content. There was a time where we didn't have the ability to create content like this, and there's a time that's coming in which we may no longer be interconnected. And on one level, there's going to be a sense of maybe peace in the world with less moving about. For example, if the grid was down, but there's also going to be some hindrances during that time, in which communication does not travel instantaneously, in which we are basically back to the Stone Age. People will also no longer be able to easily entertain themselves, though, at the same time, with a wide array of videos. People are going to be having to entertain themselves through nature. Looking at things in a way that perhaps they never looked at certain things before.